A wise man had been sentenced to death and was imprisoned in the fortress jail. As he counted the days awaiting his fate, the governor visited the prison to check on the inmates. The condemned prisoners seized the opportunity to beg for his mercy. The governor, who loved humor, decided to mock them and said, "A great merchant has gifted me a purebred camel. Whoever can teach this camel how to read will be spared, and I will even give him $1,000 as a reward." The prisoners were filled with despair, knowing the governor was merely making fun of them. But the wise man saw it as his only chance for survival. Like a drowning man clinging to a straw, he shouted loudly, "I, Your Excellency, can teach your camel to read." The governor stared at him in disbelief. "Are you serious?" he asked. "Yes," the wise man replied, "but I need 4 days with the camel, and your guards must fulfill all my requests during that period." The governor suspected that the man simply wanted good food and comfort before his inevitable execution, so he agreed. "You will have what you ask for," he said, "but if you fail, I will execute you immediately." The governor left, and the prisoners scolded the wise man for getting himself into an impossible challenge. The 4-day period began, and the wise man struggled to find a way out of his predicament. After long thinking, he came up with a brilliant idea. He starved the camel for 3 days, giving it no food at all. When the camel finally showed signs of weakness, the wise man brought a book and hid nuts, walnuts, almonds, and pistachios between its pages. He placed the book before the hungry camel. Each time he opened a page, the camel devoured the nuts, and the wise man flipped the page again, revealing more nuts. On the next attempt, the wise man placed the nuts inside, but did not flip the pages. The camel, hungry and desperate, began turning the pages with its tongue, searching for food. The wise man repeated this process every 3 days until the final day arrived. When the time was up, the governor ordered that the wise man and the camel be brought before him. Certain of the man's failure, he prepared to execute him. The wise man entered with the camel, and the governor asked, "What have you done with the camel?" The wise man responded confidently, "I have taught your camel how to read, Your Excellency. He can now read any book. Test him yourself." The governor, amused and skeptical, ordered his guard, "Give the camel a book." As soon as the book was set before him, the hungry camel rushed toward it and began flipping its pages with his tongue, studying each page carefully before turning it, just as if he were reading. The governor and his entourage were stunned. The governor then asked, "Why doesn't he read aloud so we can hear what he reads?" The wise man replied cleverly, "Your Excellency, we agreed that I would teach the camel to read. We never agreed that I would teach him to speak." Impressed by his wit, the governor issued a full pardon and granted him the $1,000 reward. Thus, the wise man returned home safe and prosperous. Please subscribe and like. One day, a minor dispute arose between the head carpenter and one of the palace men. The words were distorted until they reached the Sultan in a distorted form. The Sultan wanted to take revenge on him in a harsh way, to make an example of him for others. He summoned him to the palace and said to him in an arrogant tone, "You have all night to gather 1,000 bags of sawdust for me before sunrise. Otherwise, I will cut off your head at dawn." The news hit the carpenter like a thunderbolt. How could he possibly gather such a huge number in one night? He barely produced 1 or 2 bags a day of sawdust from what he made. He left the palace, his face pale, fear gnawing at his heart. He walked home with heavy steps, as if a mountain had been placed on his shoulders. He sat in his corner, bewildered, contemplating the dark fate that awaited him at sunrise. He could neither eat nor drink, nor could he close his eyes. His wife, a wise woman with a big heart, approached him and said calmly, "My husband, my good carpenter, sleep as you do every night and don't worry about tomorrow. Perhaps things will change tomorrow in ways you don't expect." Her words were like cold water poured on a raging fire. He felt a glimmer of relief, despite the impossibility of his survival. After a long night of insomnia, he stretched out on his bed and closed his eyes, surrendering to a fate known only to God. In the last third of the night, as he drifted between sleep and wakefulness, he began to hear strange sounds from afar, sounds of running, shouting, and general noise. But fear made him ignore everything, and he lay there until dawn. As soon as the first rays of sunlight appeared, there was a loud knocking on the door. The carpenter's heart leapt with terror, and his hands trembled. He looked at his wife with a look of despair, full of regret and farewell, and rose slowly, dragging his feet as if he were being led to the gallows. He opened the door and found the soldiers standing before him with grim faces. He extended his hands to be bound, and said in a broken voice, I know why you came. Take me." The soldiers looked at him with great surprise, and one of them said, "You're Khedive? Why would we arrest you? We didn't come to arrest you." The carpenter's facial features suddenly changed, and he remained standing in astonishment, not knowing what was happening. The commander of the soldiers said, "The king died last night. We just want you to make him a coffin to be buried in." It was as if the weight of the world had been lifted from his chest. His eyes filled with tears, but this time they were tears of joy and salvation. He turned to his wife, who was standing behind him, and looked at her with apology for his suspicions and gratitude for her wisdom and faith. She smiled and said to him calmly, "O carpenter of goodness, I told you, sleep as you do every night." A king once went out with his minister, both disguised, to walk through the city and observe the people's conditions. Their steps led them to an old house on the edge of the city. They knocked, and an elderly man welcomed them and treated them with warm hospitality. Before leaving, the king asked him, "You seem wise and noble. Give us some advice." The old man said, "Never trust kings, even if they crown you." The king gave him a reward and requested another piece of advice. The old man continued, "Never trust women, even if they sacrifice themselves for you." The king rewarded him again. The king asked for a third advice, and the old man said, "Your family is your family, even if it leads you to danger." He rewarded him a third time and departed with his minister. On the way back, the king mocked the old man's sayings. Wanting to prove their truth, the minister stole a nightingale the king dearly loved and brought it secretly to his wife for safekeeping. Later, he asked his wife for her necklace, saying he needed to add pearls to it. She agreed, but when days passed without him returning it, she suspected he had given it to another woman. Her anger grew until she went to the king and handed him the stolen nightingale, accusing her husband of taking it. The king was furious and ordered the minister's execution. A platform was built in the city square, and the minister was led in chains. On the way, they passed his family's home. His father rushed out, declaring he would sacrifice all his wealth and even himself to save his son. But the king insisted on carrying out the sentence. Just before the execution, the minister asked to say a final word. The king allowed it. The minister pulled out the necklace and said, "Do you not remember the words of the old man? Never trust kings, never trust women, and your family remains your family, even in peril." Realizing the minister had staged everything to prove the old man's wisdom, the king pardoned him and restored him to his position. Subscribe to the channel and tell us which story you like the most.